Movement isn't dead, but it has changed. The obvious elephant in the room when it comes to Modern Warfare 2 is the removal of slide cancelling. That being said, there are two methods that still work and haven't been removed since the beta. To do the first version, you need to start with your pistol out, slide, swap weapons, ADS, then jump. So again, that is slide, swap weapons, ADS, then jump. The second version of the slide cancel requires you to start with your primary weapon, slide, double tap your swap weapon button, ADS, and then jump. So again, that's slide, double tap your swap weapon button, ADS, and then jump. While these versions of slide cancelling are useful, I wouldn't use them in a gunfight round a corner. The way I would rather use them is when you're sliding onto cover like a head glitch. You're able to slide onto the head glitch, making yourself much harder to shoot as you will be hidden by the head glitch itself, allowing you to just pop up and beam the opponent. Here's an in-game example of the same thing. I get my high alert ping, so I slide to cut off the line of sight, and then I pop up while I'm on the head glitch. While bunny hopping has been removed since the Modern Warfare 2 beta, double jumping is still decent despite the fact there is a delay after your first jump, as seen here. No matter how precise your timing is, there will always be some form of a delay until you can jump again. But if you see pieces of concrete like this, and you jump up onto the sidewalk or something slightly elevated, it feels like you're able to jump again slightly faster, slightly reducing that delay, allowing you to get a more traditional bunny hop. This only works while going up and not down, but I think it's still interesting to point out. You're able to get a pseudo bunny hop just due to the damage you take from jumping from a higher height. Just like that. Now that the basic movement mechanics are out the way, we can get onto the Modern Warfare 2 specific movement mechanics, and they are insane. Dropshotting is by far one of the most underrated movements within this game, and it is extremely powerful, especially when coming around corners. This is called dropshot peeking, and I use it all the time, especially to catch people off guard when you're peeking a corner. Essentially, to do this, all you have to do is strafe out on a corner just like you normally would, but while you're strafing out, just drop shot. Doing this makes you a much harder target to hit, as most people pre-aim chest level or head level, meaning that you're able to drop shot just under their line of sight, making it quite easy to catch people off guard. The brand new movement mechanic that comes with drop shotting though is the instant drop shot. This allows you to drop shot instantly from a sprint, cutting out the crouch animation entirely. You can do this round corners just like drop shot peeking, but you can also do it in a head-to-head gunfight without any real penalty. If you combine this with pop shotting, which is where once you are prone, you spam jump, you will essentially instantly drop to the floor and then instantly go to a jump shot, which can be very jarring and pretty much impossible to track. The instant drop shot, you've got to make sure you go into settings, go to controller, go to advanced, and scroll all the way down until you see invert slide and dive behavior. Make sure you have this on standard, as it's necessary if you want to instant drop shot. Essentially what you are doing while instant drop shotting is sprinting, holding your dolphin dive button, pulling back on your dolphin dive so that while you're dolphin diving, you almost dolphin dive in place by pulling back on your analog stick just as you start to dolphin dive, and then ADSing at the same time. Once you get good at this, you'll be able to instant drop shot quite easily. I find that going in a slightly circular motion on my left analog stick helps, as strafing left or right slightly while doing this makes it much more consistent. Here's some examples of it from enemy POVs. Dolphin diving is a brand new mechanic which has been added with Modern Warfare 2, and while in older CODs it was used in place of a slide, in this game you can both slide and dive. That's the dolphin dive, and this is the slide. While dolphin diving may seem like a purely defensive mechanic, as you can't shoot while doing it, There is ways to use it offensively if you use it correctly. A way to do this is finding small edges on the map, like on these chairs, that you can dolphin dive off of to cancel your dolphin dive. If you hit the edge of them correctly, it will essentially cancel the end of your dolphin dive and actually give you a slight boost, allowing you to use them offensively. While situational, this can really throw off your enemies as they won't expect you to be able to shoot straight out of a dolphin dive, and also the animation is quite jarring to look at. While at first you may not notice these edges around the map, once you start looking for them, you'll notice them everywhere, whether that be... What the fuck is this? You'll notice them everywhere, whether that be concrete railings, or even tables and plant pots. The final thing when it comes to dolphin diving in Modern Warfare 2 is the fact that you can dolphin dive in any direction without really losing any momentum. You can do it by turning yourself in the direction you want to dolphin dive, which will get you much further, but you don't actually have to turn your character to look in the direction you want to go. You could just move your left analog stick and you can slightly get into cover by doing a shorter dolphin dive. This is very helpful if you want to evade shots or just reposition in a gunfight very quickly. This also gives you the ability to dolphin dive backwards, so if you're getting chased, you can dolphin dive backwards and then sit in a pre-aim waiting for your enemy to push you. This is really helpful if you're weak and you reckon your opponent is going to challenge you aggressively. There's a very good example from pro player Octane where he uses the dolphin dive to totally evade his opponent's shots before ego challenge.
He'll lose alpha the entire Halo soon. Jesus Christ.
Doors are really powerful as they essentially add as an extra layer to whatever movement you're doing. If you are just jump challenge someone and you do it through doors, it adds to your peeker's advantage as the enemy will not be able to see you for even longer, making you much more difficult to shoot at. Peeker's advantage is essentially when you come around a corner in any online FPS game, there is a slight delay until your enemy will be able to see you, meaning that whoever is the aggressor will see the enemy slightly quicker. You can also use doors to knock enemies out the way. This works by essentially timing it, so as soon as you hear an enemy pushing you, to run through the door, which will knock them back and throw off their camera. The final actual advanced movement technique I'm going to show you in this video is snaking. To do snaking, there are two main versions. The first version is crouch snaking, where you press your crouch button and then press your jump button over and over again. The reason you don't press your crouch button over and over again is because there is a delay if you just spam your crouch button, whereas if you press crouch jump, you're able to do it much faster. Another important thing about Modern Warfare 2 is when you do crouch snake, if you're in hipfire, you're able to crouch snake quite fast, but if you ADS, it gets much slower. So only ADS if you're imminently in a gunfight, otherwise stay in hipfire so you're able to bob up and down much faster, making you much more difficult to track. It's also important to throw a strafe in whenever you're crouch snaking, as you've got a lot of freedom of movement, but if you just go straight up and down, you're going to be pretty easy to kill. The second type of snaking, and the most broken version of snaking, is sprint snaking. To sprint snake, you go prone and you tag sprint out of it, and you do this over and over again, and from your enemy's perspective, they're barely going to be able to see your head, while you can get information on their whole body. You're also able to pop up periodically to pop shots, or when you've got a clear shot, you're able to pop up and just beam the opponent. Strafing is also really important, and you should be doing it in pretty much every single one of your gunfights, as especially on controller, it increases your rotational aim assist, allowing you to hit your shots much easier while making you a harder target to shoot at for your opponents. While this is very basic, it hasn't been so powerful in recent years as they have drastically decreased your ADS strafe speed and your ADS shooting speed. That being said, in this game, it does feel faster than it has in the previous 3 games, which makes it much more powerful. They have also added an animation to your character, so while you're strafing, your character's upper torso and head will lean left or right depending on which way you are strafing, making you even harder to shoot. All of this combined makes strafing a pretty much necessary movement that anybody can do and is very important to use in all of your gunfights. It's also important to note that when you jump around a corner, to strafe in the opposite direction you came from. This goes for pretty much every movement. This makes you much harder to shoot at, and I think it's something that a lot of people overlook. Another nuance with strafing is when you're up close, you can do tighter strafes and not strafe as far, as it will still make you pretty difficult to shoot on your opponent's screen. Whereas when you're at further distances, it's important to increase the distance you're strafing, as both this makes it easier to track opponents, but also makes you harder to shoot at. Strafing is also really good when you're holding an angle, as when you're holding a pre-aim, it's important to strafe into a wall or at least strafe slightly, because that means when someone comes around the corner, you will get rotational aim assist, which allows you to react pretty much instantly without actually having to touch your right analog stick. Here's an example of this now. See how my aim dragged to the player without me even touching my right stick. This is pretty important if you're holding an angle, especially in a more sweaty match. In previous CODs, this hasn't worked while prone, but now you're able to do it while prone, as there's no penalty for slightly strafing while prone. This isn't great for evading bullets, but is very good for gaining rotational aim assist. Here's an example of this now. My final note when it comes to strafing is to go into your settings, go to controller settings, and go all the way down until you find input dead zones, and find your left stick max input dead zone, and lower this to something like 0.60 or anything really lower than 0.99 or 1, which is the default, as if you lower it, it essentially means that you don't have to move your left stick as much to get a full range of motion. This is really helpful when strafing, especially as you don't have to move your stick left and right as much to get a full strafe, meaning you're able to move much faster around the map and also makes your controller feel much more responsive. I'm just going to add a few other movement tips and just mechanical tips about the game that I don't really think fit in other sections, so I'm just going to run you through them here. One thing being that when you call in something like a counter UAV, your character pulls out a phone in this game, and it takes quite a long time for you to actually be able to call it in, which can really ruin your flow. So what you can do is start proning, and it just cancels the animation. So while you're calling in kill streaks like UAVs, it's probably worth just going prone for a second and then going back into a sprint just to totally cancel that animation so it doesn't screw you over. Another thing would be meleeing actually resets your tag sprint. So as you can see here, once I run out of tag sprint, if I melee again, I'm back into tag sprint perfectly fine and I can keep going. This doesn't work with a knife, sadly. It only works with a gun, but if you're running with a pistol, this will work just the same. There is one other way to reset your tag sprint, and this is by tag sprinting. Once you run out of tag sprint, crouch ADS, and you've got tag sprint again. I don't actually find this method as helpful as some people, but I do think it's worth pointing out, as I'm sure on bigger maps this could actually be very useful.